We are going to add to our sorrows, and we're going to do a ritual of lamentation. This is a concept from the Reverend Carol Sissel, and it was adapted by the Reverend Erica Hewitt. This has been a week of outrage and lamentation. The deep generational trauma of white supremacy in our country made itself known yet again when George Floyd died under Minneapolis police officers' knee. This was a 21st century lynching. It was not an isolated act of white violence. It's been what's been happening to Black and brown people, and especially to Black men for centuries, for millennia. Will you take a breath with me? And will you please use the chat to write the name of one of the many Black people who have been killed through violence at the hands of white people. If you identify as white, our grief must also be a reckoning. This violence is at the heart of our country's origin story. Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz points out, the founding of a state based on the ideology of white supremacy, the widespread practice of African slavery, and a policy of genocide and land theft. We will not ignore George Floyd's death or its terrible context. We have a metastatic racism, says Ibram Kendi, and it is literally killing America. So along with your chalice, have your bowl of water and some salt. Use your hand to stir some salt into the water, to submerge your fingers into it. As we have promised to put ourselves into the holy work of anti-racism, I even invite you to taste the salty water as a reminder of the grief and trauma inflicted on Black and brown bodies in this country, and the legacy of that pain that is ours to help both dismantle and heal. I will be saying the names aloud in the chat. I invite you to say them aloud as well. And with each one, dip your fingers in the salt. Antonio Arce, Tamar Rice, Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, Philando Castile, George Floyd, Eric Garner, Walter Scott, Keith Childs, Jamar Clark, Emmett Till, Renisha McBride, Sandra Bland, Joseph Shotgun Williams of the Hot 8 Brass Band, Maud Arbery, Alton Sterling, Martin Luther King Jr., Breonna Taylor, Jonathan Farrell, Dion Johnson here in Phoenix, Freddie Gray, Tatiana Jefferson, Gerard Stewart, L'Oreal Tessing, Terrence Crutcher, Betty Jones, Yvonne Smallwood, Rakia Boyd, Tony McDade. Say those names with grief and with responsibility. Say the names on your heart or write them down. Our tears are not enough. Our anger isn't even enough. But our lamentation and rage drive us to act, to hold vigil, to make phone calls, to offer financial support, to interrupt harmful conversations, and to initiate uncomfortable conversations with those who would rather look away. George Floyd, Malcolm X, Mohammed Mahayam in Phoenix. May these tears be a beginning, but may we keep going. Okay, I want you to do something. I want you to take your hand. And I want you to put it over your heart. And I want you to just hold it there for a second. I want you to take a few breaths. I'm not saying that what we're doing is easy. I'm saying it's necessary. Hold your heart for a moment. And keep it there as long as you need. It's been a week. I mean, let's be honest, it's been quite a few months, right? But here's the thing. The coronavirus is new. Killing Black people is not new. We can be angry, but we should not be surprised. I want to talk a little bit about what happened on Monday, because I feel like in different parts, it was a through line story. In Central Park, in New York City, a Black man asked a white woman to follow the park rules. The white woman became irate and threatened to call the police, and then did call the police, saying vehemently and intentionally and over that a Black man was threatening her. Not a person, not a human, not a man. She intentionally called out that it was a Black man. She knew exactly what she was doing. She knew that by identifying him as a Black man, she would be more protected and he would be penalized. By calling the police, she was setting him up for a possible incident with the police, an incident that could potentially leave him dead. She was potentially causing manslaughter by calling the police on him, just for asking her to put a leash on her dog. Cut to later that day. George Floyd, a Black man, is detained by police for a minor incident. He was totally subdued once he was in handcuffs. And yet, an officer kneeled on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Do you know how long that is? George said, "I can't breathe." And he called out for his mama. Eventually, he became unresponsive. And still, after he was unresponsive, the officers kneeled on his neck for another 2 minutes and 53 seconds. The incident killed him. 3 other officers stood by and watched, potentially kneeling as well. They did not give him CPR. We can be horrified by this, but we cannot be surprised. It is not really that different from what happened to Eric Garner, who also died from a chokehold in New York City and said, "I can't breathe." Mike Brown, who was shot while his back was turned in St. Louis. Sandra Bland, who died after a traffic stop. Philando Castile, who was killed, 4-year-old in her car seat in the back of their car. And so many more. These incidents are not rare. What's happening is that they are now caught on tape. Now we're outraged because we can see them. Without the tapes, we came up with way too many explanations. And I want to be very clear on who we is. We, it's the white people who said we couldn't do something about it. They resisted arrest, they committed a crime, their background, whatever, the officer feared for their life. Heck, even with video, those things are said. But we have to see the humanity of George Floyd. We cannot look away while he was murdered. We cannot look away. We know that Black men are 2.5 times more likely to be killed by police than white men. And getting shot by police is the leading cause of death for Black men in the United States. The same police who are called to protect and serve. So here's the thing. Today, I ain't got no energy to talk about whether white supremacy is still an issue. I do not want a discussion on whether we should use that word or not. We are beyond that. We are way beyond that. And I do not want to hear people complain about how Black people are protesting. There have been 1 million nonviolent protests. There have been 1 million ways of doing it the way that you're supposed to, and 1 million opportunities for things to change. What form of protest is exactly supposed to work? So taking a knee wasn't okay. Marching peacefully isn't okay. Working to reform the police through existing infrastructure wasn't okay. Celebrities speaking out isn't okay. All of those happened. They didn't change it. We are still in the same situation. What specifically is going to work and fit those standards that are really just white supremacy in disguise? And I'm really just tired with people being more upset about the destruction of property than they are about the destruction of human lives. This goes for Corona too, where we were too worried about the capitalistic economy than we were about losing 100,000 lives or more. If the fires of our stores is more disturbing to you than watching George Floyd's last breaths on the ground, then we need to have a conversation about our UU principles and values. We are angry, and we should be. Maya Angelou said, if you're not angry, you're either a stone or you're too sick to be angry. You should be angry. You must not be bitter. Bitterness is like cancer. It eats upon the host. It doesn't do anything to the object of its displeasure. So use that anger. Yes, write it, paint it, you dance it, you vote it, you do everything about it, you talk it. Never stop talking it. I want to take a moment to address the white folks in our congregation. First of all, please remember that this is not about us. We are angry, we are distressed, but when the anger dissipates, we get to put it down until it happens again. It is our Black siblings who are affected here, and let us never forget that. As soon as we make it about ourselves, we turn the lens away from where it should be pointed. As soon as we take the microphone, we turn it away from where it should be pointed. It is difficult, yes. And we, as white people, are used to being able to do something to make it better. We are not used to being powerless. We need to live in this discomfort. We need to disrupt white supremacy actions and talk about it immediately when we see it, in our family and in our friends. We need to be willing to step up with our cameras when we see something, and we need to hold our officials accountable. And we need to empower the people who are doing the work with our money, our time, our infrastructure, our privilege. Black-led organizations who are willing to work towards their own liberation need our support. We can put our privilege to work. And please send some love to your Black friends. But do not put them in the position where they need to comfort you, and do not ask them to teach you how you can do better. Do your own work. Read all you can. Find spaces to responsibly learn. To my Black siblings, I love you and I see you. I want to acknowledge that you are not okay. How could you be? You have seen this over and over, and every time you know it could be you or one of your family members. You live with the knowledge that any activity you undertake is inherently more dangerous just because of the color of your skin. I lament with you. I love you. I also want to create space where you can lament together. At the end of the service, I will be sharing a link for a space for Black UUs to gather and lament together. It's this afternoon at 2 p.m. And I'll share that link at the end of the service. So as this week was happening, how many of you were like me and it was like, okay, I'm getting out there. I've got my, I've got my t-shirt, I've got my stole, ready out and join a march. But wait, we're in the middle of a pandemic. And not only that, but Arizona's COVID hospitalizations have hit new highs for 3 days in a row, the last 3 days. The state is preparing for a surge at the same time that things are opening up and people are gathering to march. And we already know that brown and Black people are being affected significantly more by this virus. I want to make sure that it is very clear that you need to make the right decision for you. Deciding to stay home and protect your family from a deadly virus doesn't make you any less of an ally. It could make you more of one by not spreading the virus or overwhelming our hospital system. You are the only ones who can assess your risk and your tolerance for that risk. And I ask you to think of that very, very carefully. I know that I will be. I also want to be very clear that I will be looking for my lead to follow Black organizers and Black-led organizations in Phoenix. None of the violent protests so far this week in Phoenix have been led by credible Black organizations. I will be looking to their direction on where I and we can be most helpful. I hope you will too. And that doesn't mean that we don't do everything that we can, but we need to follow those who are making a difference. And I want to give you permission to hold your hearts carefully. I am giving you permission. You can tell them your minister said so, to turn off the TV, to not scroll through Facebook every hour, to step away and take care of yourselves. Because living through all of this takes strength and perseverance. It is a struggle that has gone on for way too long, as Benji sang. Like the virus, this is a long haul. We need to do the long haul work. We need to show up in so many ways, and we need to guard our hearts and take care of ourselves to do that. But as a country, we must change. We must acknowledge the machines and systems of racism and work to dismantle them. This country is built on the labor and death and oppression of Black bodies. We need to give notice to this system. Its time is up. We need to dismantle this machine. We are in the midst of the fire of racism. We collectively feel like we can't breathe. George Floyd said, "I can't breathe." We see and we feel the rage. We feel the pent-up frustration, the fighting for decades without change. We yearn for justice and for our whole collective liberation. At the end of the day, what unites us is love. We love our family. We love our mamas, and we all call out for them at the moment of our deaths. We are all willing to fight for our freedom. I am holding you all in my heart. I am holding our city in my heart. I am holding our country in my heart. I am holding the protesters in my heart, and I am holding those who stay home in my heart. We are united in our humanity. May our humanity guide us in the struggle and the dark days ahead. So might it be.